Hello. I am not going to hold you long. At least I'm trying. My heart is not to. In my mind, I said to myself, surely the Lord doesn't want me to come on here and say anything today. Surely there is no way that I can possibly encourage a wife in a situation like this with what has happened to me within the last 48 hours. Pray my strength. This is the part of the assignment that I don't know how much you can really prepare for. This is the part of the assignment where there's not enough. There's just not enough. It's not enough words. It's not enough to say. It's not enough to study for. It's just not enough. This is the part of the assignment where God will be glorified in all that he does. God will be glorified, and we will have to continue to pick up and do what is necessary. I got a phone call from my son. Sharing with me that my grandbaby had passed away. I had been speaking with him earlier in that day. And so I was able to see my fat before he passed away. I asked God, what is the reason? What is the reason for me coming on? What is the reason for me sharing this information? What is the reason for me having to put my pain out here like this? And God said, sharing this story will help wives understand the assignments. Sharing this story will help wives to know how important the assignment is. God is the type of God who, if you have a relationship with him, he will give you the heads up. If you have a relationship with him, he would show you things. He would place people on your path. He would bring things to your memory. Sometimes God does like a foreshadow where he will show you something ahead of time, or send somebody or that type of thing. And to just kind of prepare you for what's to come. If any of you have been following me for any amount of time, or if you are new to my channel, hello and welcome. My name is Coach T. And I am a mental health wife coach and marriage consultant. I usually come on to share and encourage wife clients who are going through a hardship in a marriage, who are dealing with a spouse, an unhealthy spouse who is in active adultery, addiction, or has abandoned his household. But today I felt that it was necessary for me to highlight the importance of the spiritual assignment, one, and then taking care of your mental health. One of the ways that I process through things is by talking it out, expressing myself through how I feel, expressing myself through just using my words. And so I'm here to do that. For the ones who have already been supporting me and my family and praying for us, I want to say thank you. You don't know how much it means to a person when you receive that type of support. It is something that sometimes you don't need a word, sometimes just showing up in that way just shows and says a lot and speaks volume about that person. So thank you for the ones who have supported. Thank you for the ones who have reached out. Thank you for the ones who have prayed for us. Y'all, Coach has not been okay. Like I said, as a mental health wife coach, I share with my wife clients all the time about the importance of talking through their mental health issues and talking through their stuff. And so I'm going to use this time to talk through mine. And I want to share with you briefly about my fat. Who the Lord blessed us with for 4 months. And so I felt like God said, share your story from the beginning to now. That same son who called me and shared the news about my grandbaby was the same son that called me last year to tell me about they were having a baby. And I remember prior to the phone call, like a week or two prior, I talk about that foreshadowing, God had just kept on putting in my spirit for me to give them grace, he said, have mercy on them. Just have mercy on them and give them grace. Have mercy on them and give them grace. And I could not understand why God kept on telling me to have mercy on my son and his girlfriend. But he kept on saying, just give them, have mercy on them, give them grace, have mercy on them and give them grace. Then he started sharing with me about the Bible verse in Psalms that talks about children are a blessing from the Lord. And I'm like, okay, where does Bible verse come from? Because I know doggone well, right? And so that Bible verse was like heavy in my spirit. Like, children are a blessing from the Lord. And so when I got the phone call from my son that they were expecting, immediately I knew that the Lord was telling me, to have mercy on them, and give them grace, because he knew how I felt about them having a baby. As a mother who, you have a desire for your children to live a certain way. You have a desire for your children to be in a position in place where they can take care of themselves. And so not only am I his mother, but I'm also his advisor, his counselor. I had been trying to, really keep them, on the right track. I know sometimes our words can, go in vain until they really realize one day and they have heard you. And so I beg these kids, like, y'all don't need no babies. Like, y'all do not need no baby. And by the time the young lady had found out, she was way past, like, she was almost literally at the end of her second trimester, going into her third. Because of her condition, she didn't know that she was pregnant. And so once we got the news, like, everything happened fast. Like, we had to go. Like, everything happened fast. And so we got her situated where she was able to get with an OBGYN, which was very difficult because from what I've found out, and I've worked at an OBGYN office for many years, once you become a certain, you get too far along in your pregnancy, you become a liability. And a lot of doctors do not want to carry, they want to take you on. And so we was running into a lot of that. I say that because once we find out about the baby, the warfare begun. It's like, all right, on a march, get set, go. And so the warfare started, and nobody wanted to take this young lady in. Nobody wanted to give her a chance. And me working in the OBGYN office, I'm trying to pull strings. I'm calling people. I'm trying to talk to this person. I'm trying to talk to this person. Finally, God gave us favor. And she was able to connect with a doctor, and she was able to, pretty much start her pre-medical care, even though she was way past, her time. She was way past. Her pregnancy went super duper fast. By 36 weeks, she was already at 5 centimeters, I think. And the doctor was like, okay, wait, pause, like, go sit down somewhere, because at this point, you're going to have this baby now. So she was trying to work up until her full time, of having a baby. And she did, for the most part, up until that last week. And then I remember they called me, and I can see her face, and I'm saying to myself, this girl not gonna make it to no 40 weeks. I don't know what they saying to y'all, but she's not gonna make it to no 40 weeks. I was their counselor. I was their advisor. I had been helping them and walking with them through the whole process. The baby was born at 38 weeks. Her process was quick. She wasn't in labor. I don't think she was in labor 24 hours. It went so super duper fast. Once they gave her that stuff to put her in labor, she went, and she handled her labor situation like a boss. And I remember in that process saying, man, that was so quick. That was like, it was so easy, it seemed like. I know the pain she was in probably wasn't easy, but it went really, really fast. And so, baby was born healthy, big baby. I don't remember how many pounds, but he was bigger than my son. And everything was good. You know, they started the process of, you know, getting him, you know, moving to a different room, this and that. Well, you know how they check the little test to check to see if the baby have jaundice and all that kind of stuff or whatever. That test or whatever situation came up. And because he, you know, his came back, they had to put the light on him. They put the light on him. When they put the light on him, they had told her that, you know, the baby will probably not be as hungry. He wouldn't probably be as hungry. And so, sure enough, the baby was not eating as much. And we were trying to figure out, like, this is not normal. Babies don't eat. They had, you know, to put a IV in his hand because of the jaundice medicine that it was giving him or whatever. But me, working in that field, and I worked at that hospital specifically, I knew to just tell them, like, hey, make sure that you're watching stuff, making sure that you know, you're up, being alert. You got to pay attention to these nurses because a lot of times it's late, they're tired, they're sleepy. And you want to be making sure that, you know, your baby is okay. The young lady, you know, she had family, was supposed to be there, you know, which made me feel like, okay, I didn't have to be there. You know, we had tried to talk about these things ahead of time to make certain arrangements. And one of the reasons why it was so important for somebody to be there is because, like I said, I work in this field. But I worked at that hospital. I worked the hospital on the baby floor. So I knew certain things that you should just be aware of. Well, the family member ended up leaving, whatever. And I called my son the next morning, and I was just like, the baby was just heavy on my mind because they were saying the baby wasn't eating. And I'm saying, he's a newborn baby. Babies eat especially after he had been eating so much. Well, my son had me on FaceTime, and you can see the nurse coming in, and she was coming to do her, you know, her daily routine or whatever. And, you know, I said, turn the camera. Just turn the camera so I can see what's going on there. Because she's kind of quiet, you know, because I was talking to them, and she was working on the baby, but she had stopped talking back to them. She wasn't saying as much. And so, next thing I know, she got the baby flipped upside down, and she runs out of the room. I'm like, so I'm telling my son, go after her. Go see what's going on. So he's like, Ma, I don't see her. I'm telling him where to go at. Go to the nurse's station, go up there, this and that and other. He tells me, Ma, they up here, they got the baby surrounded with nurses. I was at work. Again, me working in that environment, me seeing the situation they was in, I immediately headed to the hospital. Prayed in the spirit all the way. So they telling him, you know, go back to the room, and we're going to send, we'll send someone down there to speak to you. We'll send a team down there to speak to you. I'm saying, a team? Why would they need to send a team to speak to you? Now, you got to understand, these are young parents. So a lot of times when you're young parents, they don't know the questions to ask. They don't know, you know, what to say or this type of thing, which was why it was so important for me to make sure somebody was there with them. Like, that was what I was emphasizing the entire time. And they just didn't know. So once I got to the hospital, because I had remembered the lady from the video, I seen her, I went up to her like, hey, what's going on here? What happened? You know, you ran out the room with the baby, this and that and the other. Didn't tell these kids anything. They sitting there trying to figure out what's going on with their baby. You not saying nothing. Oh, wait, they're sending the baby to the ICU. When she went to go do a test or whatever, hitting the baby on his bottom, on his foot, something like that. It was like he wasn't responding, and that was not normal. And so she wanted to make sure that, you know, she get him in the right hands and in the right care of the ones who could, you know, that work with babies. So basically, the situation with that was the baby blood sugar had dropped. The light that he had on him was making him very, very weak and making him tired. And so his blood sugar had dropped. And because his blood sugar had dropped, um, they thought that he had, you know, stopped breathing, whatever. He was fine. He had to stay in the ICU for about a week or so after that. And he was fine. They finally got him. They thought he probably had a seizure during that time. So they had all these different, you know, things on the baby. And I just remember saying to myself then, like, this is a lot. All right, this is a lot. This is a lot for parents, young parents, to have to experience. But it was also a lot for me as the grandmother, watching and experiencing that because I worked in that field. Was very aware of what was going on. I understood the numbers. I knew the blood work that they was doing. It was a lot. But we got through that part. So the baby was able to come home. He had not had any more problems after that. You know, they was monitoring him at one point for his, you know, blood sugar to make sure that he kept his numbers up. And he did. He was a healthy baby. He was a very healthy baby. The morning of his passing, I got a text message from one of my son's friends, mom, who had reached out and wanted me to reach out to my son to see if maybe he had heard from her son. Her son, she said she had not seen in 2 weeks. She had not heard from her son. I knew, you know, the young man from my son and just growing up in the neighborhood. And so I was like, of course, you know, I'll find out. Of course, I'll, you know, reach out to my son and, you know, see if I will reach out to my son and see if he heard anything. And so that's what led me to calling my son later on in the day. And that's how I was able to see my fat. Usually, I would visit with my fat on Sundays after church. That was our date. Last Sunday, we did not make it to go see him. We didn't make it to go see him because his father was tired. His father had been the one who had been watching him. And so I said, oh, they're tired. They need to rest, whatever. You know, it's fine. We'll just go see him sometime later on during the week. Well, that week passed by and we didn't get to go see him during the week. Some of you may have known, I've shared before in the past that my first child, I had a daughter, 24 years ago this year. She would have been 24. And I went through the same type of experience. I went through the same type of trauma. When I was at work during the week, and even on that day, the people were telling me, you got a patient, you got a patient, you got to go to the patient. I'm like, I know, I got a patient. I'm talking to my fat. I'm talking to my fat. He was crawling on the bed. He had just started crawling. He was making noises with his mouth. He had started watching like little cartoons. He was sitting up and moving around a lot. But he always had this look on his face like he was just concerned about something. And that stood out to me because that was something that my mother shared with me as I got older. She said when people would see me as a child, I would always look like I had like something on my mind. Like this baby looked like she got a bill to pay, or this baby looked like she worrying about something or whatever. And so when I would see that on him, I'm like, this baby he's on a mission. This baby got an assignment. And he did. He always just had this look. But then you would talk to him and play with him, and he'll start laughing, and he would smile at you. But after that moment was over, he'll go back to that look. Over the course of the 4 months, we had some highs and some lows with the baby's parents. I had some highs and lows with the baby's parents. Because I've had experience as a mother, because I lost my first child, there were certain things that I tried to share and bring to their attention. There were certain things that I mentioned to them that they was not receiving of. And so the more and more I would share and the more and more I would say things to them, the less they would receive it. It got so bad with my grandson's mother that we had to distance ourselves. But I was able to go and see my grandson on a weekly basis, visiting him with my son. So I will take my sons and my grandson, and we will all go out. And that was our time together after church. Life is a teacher. And sometimes God will place people on your path who has already taken the assignment that you are in the midst of. God will place people on your path who have went through something that you may be in the middle of going through. And so I was the cheat code for them. And I couldn't understand. I already took this assignment. I already know the answers to the assignment. Let me give you the cheat sheet. And they didn't want to take the cheat sheet. They didn't want to take the cheat sheet. They wanted to do what new parents do. And because I recognize where they were, the level that they were on, and because I wanted to still be part of my grandson's life, I respect their wishes. My grandson completed his assignment. He was placed in his parent's life to turn some things around. My son and my daughter-in-law would go to church with me on a regular basis, and I had kept trying to encourage them, come back to church, come back to church. We would go to church together. After church, we would go out to eat and hang out, and that was our weekly time together. So in a sense, that was what I started doing with the baby. They didn't want the baby to be in the daycare at the church, and I didn't want to take the baby without them. And so our time was on Sundays after church, and we would do the same thing that I did with their parents when their parents were with his parents when they were going to church. We all have a little bit of rebellions in us, and that's why the Lord reminds us to kill the flesh, pride, stubbornness, your own personal will, just wanting to do things your way. All those things can interfere in when God is trying to teach you something, show you something. I did not get to spend that last Sunday with my fat. Because that was my time with him. But God did allow me. God did allow me that day, his last day here on earth, to look into his eyes. They had the phone really close to his face. And it was like he was saying, all right, Grandma, I made it. I finished my assignment. And he did. He gave me that look in his face. All eyes. I want to share with you the importance of the assignment. I talked about a couple of weeks ago about this wind that blows, right? This wind that we had been experiencing here in Georgia. And that morning, it woke me up. It was blowing so hard because we had been experiencing this wind for a while, a couple of weeks now. And I thought it had passed. I thought the wind had passed that morning. And before I got that text message from my son's friend's mother, the wind woke me up. And everything outside was shaking and blowing, and it started raining real fast. And it was like, what in the world is going on here? What's taking place? My grandbaby was 4 months. I remember telling one of the girls at the job, oh, my baby, my fat, he's going to be 4 months on the 18th. She's like, are you going to do something for him for his 4 months? I was like, oh, no. But every month, I would count down, oh, he's going to be this old. He's going to be this old. He's going to be this old. If we study what the number 4 means, 4 is a representative of change of direction. Um, and so for the change of direction, um, that's what God gave me comfort with. When we went to the hospital, they gave us a badge to go in to see him. They had to label it, and it said T4. And immediately when I seen that T, I thought, turn. That baby came into our lives for 4 months and turned some things around. A shift took place. Things got out of control at one point. But now that we are here, it makes so much sense now. There are some assignments that you would not like. There are some things that you will have to do in this life and you will not like them. But one thing is for certain. If God has given you an assignment, make sure that you finish the assignment completely. Because I come on my platforms and I share the gospel and I teach the good news and I encourage and uplift individuals on how to get right with Jesus. I coach the wives, but I'm rooting for the men, right? I coach the wives, but I root for the husbands. I coach the wives to not give up and not to throw in a towel on their marriages and to stand in the gap for their husband's salvation as much as God gives them strength to do so. My grandbaby was a representative of completing his assignment. At 4 months, his assignment came to an end. And I have shared with wives and my clients numerous of times about there's an expiration date on your assignment. You may not like it. You may not enjoy it. You may have questions. You may have a serious look on your. But there is an ending date to the assignment. And so if I can't encourage you in no kind of other way, I want to encourage you, wife, to finish your assignment. Thank you again for all of your support, your prayers, your love, and your condolence. I pray that this message have helped you in some sort of way. If you want to support me and my family at this time, there'll be a link I will share. For the ones who are connected to my Cash App, my Apple Pay, you can always send donations and well wishes and whatever you want to give to that as well. Thank y'all so much. I love y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Blessings.